So in the last class, we have discussed about the rock bursts. Today we are going to discuss about the various causes of rock bursts. What are the mitigating measures you have to take to control the rock bursts, and how do you monitor the rock bursts? Today's class will deal with causes of rock bursts, mitigation measures for the rock bursts, monitoring methods for the rock bursts. So we have seen that mining depth increasing day by day because the deposits near the surface are already mined out. So we have to go deep to get the minerals. But going deep into the mine creates different conditions in comparison with the near surface mining due to the increased stress. As a result, stress-induced rock fracturing is unavoidable, and when stored energy is suddenly released, rocks fail violently, leading to seismic events and rock bursts. Therefore, a rock burst is defined as damage to an excavation that occurs in a sudden or violent manner and is associated with a seismic event, just like your earthquakes. Rock bursts are the most serious and least understood problem facing deep mining operations. With the advance of the mining depth in higher stress environments, rock bursting is becoming an increasing problem throughout the world. Understanding and prediction of the rock bursts that may happen during the mining process have got a critical attention. It has been realized that rock burst hazard must be properly managed as part of a daily ground control decision-making process because the current mining conditions and the techniques cannot be changed to eliminate rock burst hazards. The first published information on rock burst was in 1738 from tin mines of England. During the second half of 19th century, rock bursts were noted in Western Europe in coal mines, while in the 20th century, rock bursts occurred in gold mines on Witwatersrand in South Africa and even in India on Kolar gold fields. Subsequently, many hard rock mines in Canada, China, Chile, South Africa, Australia, Sweden, and other countries, and some deep tunnels in Switzerland, China, and Peru have experienced rock bursts to various degrees. Considerable research effort at an international scale, for example in Australia, in Canada, in South Africa, and in China, has been devoted to the understanding of the rock burst phenomena. Despite significant research and progress in the last 2 decades, the problem is still not well understood. Let us see what are the different types of rock bursts you come across. Gottlieb and Stasi in 1994 and Gottlieb in 1997 classified rock bursts into 5 types. There are 5 types of rock bursts are there. Number one, their classification was based on fast motions from seismic records, the richer magnitude of the events, and the postulated source mechanism. For brevity of discussion, it is considered to have 3 rock-burst types like strain bursts, pillar bursts, and fault slip bursts. Rock bursts are either mining induced by energy release causing damage at the source. For example, strain burst without significant dynamic stress increase from a remote seismic event, or dynamically induced rock bursts with damage caused by energy transfer or significant dynamic stress increase from a remote seismic event. For example, strain burst with dynamic stress increase caused by a remote seismic event. Table number 1 gives the suggestion for a classification scheme of seismic event sources in tunnels, which was given by Ortlieb and Stasi in 1994. Seismic event is your strain bursting, postulated source mechanism, superficial falling with violent ejection of fragments, fast motion from seismic record, usually undetected, could be impulsive, implosive. Richter scale is minus 0.220. Buckling failure, phase cross, shear rupture, fault slip. This also we have discussed in the last class. So what is a strain burst? In many deep underground excavations, strain bursts are the most common rock burst type. They can be mining induced due to static stress change caused by nearby mining, or dynamically induced due to dynamic stress increase caused by a remote seismic event called dynamically induced strain bursts. Two conditions must be fulfilled for a strain burst to occur. First one, the tangential stress. The maximum principal stress must be able to build up in the immediate skin of the excavation. Second, the rock mass surrounding the fracturing rock must create a relatively soft loading environment such that the rock fails locally in an unstable, violent manner. The energy released by a strain burst comes from the stored elastic strain energy in the failing rock and the surrounding rock mass, not from the seismic source. Therefore, in mining, stress changes in the drifts, horizontal tunnels in a mine may occur after development due to stopping activities. Consequently, mining-induced strain bursts can happen during the production stage. Strain bursts normally occur within 3 times the diameter from the advancing phase. Such strain bursts can also occur right at the working phase and in the floor of the tunnel. Delayed strain bursts occur in situations where the maximum principal stress remains constant, but the rock strength degrades over time, or the rock strength reduces due to loss of confinement. Due to a potentially unstable equilibrium situation near an excavation, strain bursts may be triggered by a small dynamic disturbance, a production blast, a remote pillar burst, or fault slip event. For such dynamically triggered strain bursts, little or none of the released energy stems from the triggering event. Instead, the stored strain energy or the bursting location and the surrounding rock constitutes most of the released energy. Second one is your pillar burst. What is a pillar burst? You know that the board and pillar method of mining is practiced widely in India. You leave some pillars to give support to the roof. As the name implies, it is defined as a violent failure in the pillar core or the complete collapse of a pillar. Pillar bursts often occur in deep mines when the extraction ratio is high at a later stage of mining. The volume of failed rock and the affected surrounding rock mass is usually larger than that involved in a strain burst, and hence the released seismic energy is much greater. Similar to strain burst, pillar burst can be classified into mining induced pillar burst and dynamically induced pillar burst. A mining induced pillar burst is caused by static stress increase from increased room span or nearby stope extraction. The seismic source is in the confined core of the pillar, and rock burst damage and seismic source are co-located. On the other hand, a dynamically induced pillar burst is caused by dynamic stress increase from a remote seismic event. In this case, the rock burst damage and the seismic source fault slip event are not co-located. Third one is your fault slip burst. Fault, if there is a geological fault, a slip plane is there, so fault slip burst may take place. It is caused by the dynamic slippage along a pre-existing fault plane or along a newly generated shear rupture. A critically stressed fault with shear stresses exceeding the shear strength and can slip when the degree of freedom is changed, as it is intersected by a mine opening. Alternatively, it may slip when the shear strength is reduced due to drop in clamping stress or water infiltration into the fault. Water plays an important role for the fault slip burst by infiltrating into the fault plane. Finally, it may slip when the mining induced shear stress is increased and exceeds the strength of the fault, which is a function of the normal stress. The coefficient of friction of the fault surface its waviness or dilation characteristics, and in the case of fracture propagation, the strength of the rock mass. Similar to pillar burst, fault slip rock bursts occur in deep mines when the extraction ratio is high and large closures are allowed to persist over large mining volumes. The most plausible cause of fault slip along a pre-existing fault is the reduction of normal stress acting on the fault as a result of nearby mine. Although an increase in shear stress or a combination of normal stress decrease and shear stress increase can similarly cause a fault to slip. This type of rock burst may release a large amount of seismic energy coming from the instantaneous relaxation of elastic strain stored in a large volume of highly stressed rock surrounding the slip or rupture area. They may create sufficiently high or ground motions that can cause damage to excavations. Dynamically induced strain bursts cause shakedown of loose or insufficiently supported rock or trigger strain burst and pillar burst at relatively remote locations, hundreds of meters from the seismic source. Shear rupture type rock bursts have been observed in some mines. Large rock bursts with richer magnitude exceeding 3.5 can result from violent propagation of shear fracture through intact rocks. Rock burst damage. What is the rock burst damage mechanism? How do the rock burst damage the rock mass? Understanding the rock burst source mechanism is critical to deriving strategies to eliminate and mitigate rock burst hazard, and a thorough understanding of the rock burst damage mechanism is needed to work out tactics to implement rock burst support. Kager et al. In 1996 classified rock burst damage into three types, that is, rock bulking due to fracturing, rock ejection due to seismic energy transfer, and rockfall induced by seismic shaking. Rock bulking due to rock fracturing can be caused by both a remote seismic event and the bursting event itself. Brittle rock fracturing occurs as a result of crack and fracture initiation, propagation, and coalescence. This leads to the generation of new fracture surfaces in a previously intact or less fractured medium, and as a consequence, this rock mass disintegration leads to rock mass bulking. This bulking process is, in large part, a result of geometric block incompatibilities and thus is much larger than dilation during plastic rock mass yield. Most importantly, it is directional, perpendicular to the excavation wall. During bulking, the broken rock volume increases as it is fractured and fragmented. There is another type that is called a rock ejection, can be caused by a strain burst event, a pillar burst event, or by a remote seismic event through dynamic movement transfer. Ejected rock may travel at velocities in excess of 3 meters per second, velocities up to 10 meters per second were also estimated. The upper end of this ejection velocity range cannot be explained by the moment transfer damage mechanism alone. When rock suddenly fractures, part of the stored strain energy in the surrounding rocks can be transferred to blocks in the form of kinetic energy, causing rock ejection. With high strain energy stored in the rock near the excavation, the stress wave from a remote seismic event may add a dynamic stress disturbance and cause a strain burst, bring the bucket to overflow. In this case, the ejection velocity is not directly related to the momentum from the seismic source, but more closely related to the energy stored in the near wall rock and how this stored energy is released. There is seismically induced rockfalls are also there, as the name suggests, are caused by the low frequency shaking of ground due to a large remote seismic event, perhaps induced by a pillar burst or a fault slip rock burst. It occurs when an incoming seismic wave accelerates a volume of rock that was previously stable under static loading conditions, causing forces that overcome the capacity of the support system. Note that it is also possible that the fast incoming seismic wave may fracture a volume of rock and subsequent vibration induced by the seismic waves accelerates the fractured rocks, causing fall of ground. Seismically induced rockfalls occur frequently at intersections where the span is large and roof rock confinement is low. So what are the various causes of rock burst? Let us discuss about the various causes of rock burst. There are many factors that influence the rock burst damage and the severity of the damage. First one is the depth of mine working. At what depth you are mining. Increasing the mining depth, gravitational stress also increases, and the ore body and the surrounding rocks can store more strain energy, which always induce destructive bursts. The periodic failure of thick and steep roofs may cause sudden release of strain energy to trigger the rock burst and the coal bombs. Second factor is your stress conditions. High stress is one of the prime of rock burst in mines. High stress conditions are typically a combination of the natural pre-mining in situ stress and stress changes induced by mining. Excavations in rock induce stress concentrations and stress relief, creating biaxial or near uniaxial loading conditions near the openings. This reduction in confining stresses can initiate rock mass degradation and brittle failure of intact rock. Depending on the nature of the loading system, properties of the rock mass, failure may occur in a stable, yielding manner or in an unstable, dynamic manner. Both stable and unstable failure conditions result in energy release and the generation of seismicity. However, it is unstable failure that has the greater potential to release significant energy release and causing large seismic events and potentially rock bursts. So this table, this figure gives you the damage mechanism, damage severity, required support functions. This also we have discussed in the previous class. So then the geological conditions are also the most important factors for the rock burst to take place. Geological conditions like type of rock, whether the rock is igneous rock or metamorphic rock, and if the rock is igneous and metamorphic rocks, they are very prone to rock bursts. Igneous rocks and metamorphic rocks are very prone to rock bursts. And second, the mineral composition of the rock. Siliceous rocks, silica rocks, and those contain hard mineral are more prone to rock bursts. Fine-grained rocks are also more prone to rock bursts. So silica, if the siliceous rocks containing silica and hard mineral if present in the rock, they are very prone to rock burst. Similarly, the fine-grained rocks are also very prone to rock burst. Third one is strong roof and floor strata. If the roof is very strong and floor is also very strong floor strata immediately below the ore and strong roof strata within 30 to 50 feet of the deposit have long been recognized as major contributors to rock burst. In fact, the confinement offered to the ore body by these stronger, deeper strata appears necessary to generate levels of stored energy sufficient to cause rock burst within and immediate to the ore body structure. And if there are some geological discontinuity planes are there, like your faults, folds, dikes, the location, continuity, orientation, and material properties of the geological features are significant factors in rock mass scaling. And these characteristics dictate how energy is stored and released in a deforming rock mass. It is important to note that while geological features play a role in the release of energy and the generation of seismicity and rock burst damage. Fifth one is orientation of the working face, in which direction you are working. The angle between the working face and the geological features such as the dikes, faults, or dominant joint sets plays in causing stress concentration around the face and thereby influence the occurrence of the rock bursts. Sixth one is your method of working. Whether you are working Roman pillar method, modern pillar method, longwall mining method, caving method, or stowing method. Rock burst can be caused due to inappropriate excavation span, excavation ratio, rock support system, and production rate while considering a mining method. Further, improper mine layout and sequence can induce an extremely high stress concentration on a localized area such as one or more pillars. The pillar which is out of sequence is most prone to rock bursts. Seventh one is presence of major faults, geological faults. The stress concentration is evident on the structural planes, faults, and weak interfaces along the excavation. This region is obviously the location where rock bursts are most likely to occur. The locations of structural planes, such as faults, are also the dangerous zones for sudden stress change. Eighth one is mechanical properties of the rock mass. Mechanical properties of the rock mass. Bursting rocks characterized with their high strength, higher deformation modulus, and brittle behavior of the rock mass. The violent detachment of rock fragments during rock bursting is associated with how the stored mechanical energy, strain energy is dissipated during the entire deformation process. A certain part of stored energy would be transformed into kinetic energy. The kinetic energy results in the detachment, which may be thrown into the opening with a certain velocity depending on the overall stiffness of the surrounding system and deformation characteristics of the bursting material. So the uniaxial compressive strain, modulus of elasticity, and brittleness of rock plays dominant role for storage of strain energy in the rock. Okay, the uniaxial compressive strength UCS, modulus of elasticity, and brittleness of rock plays dominant role for storage of strain energy in the rock mass. So strain energy density is equal to sigma square divided by 2E. Rock brittleness is equal to sigma c minus sigma t divided by sigma c plus sigma t, or sine phi, or sigma c by sigma t, or q sigma c, where q is the percentage of fine in Proto-Dinac-Coulomb index test. So how to control the rock bursts? The problem of rock burst control resolve into two types of consideration: that involving factors which affect the incidence of seismic activity, and that concerned with factors which reduce the effects of the damaging seismic events. Some of the important factors which are considered for controlling the rock burst or its reducing its effects are discussed below. First one is reducing mine-induced seismicity. Minimizing the impact of seismic activity on mining operations may take one of several forms of proactive measures. Several techniques and methods have been developed in an attempt to assess rock burst potential of underground mine structures. Several of these techniques are based on the energy balance around excavations. Among those is the energy release rate that was developed in South Africa. Energy release rate is found to have a significant correlation with the risk or potential of damaging rock bursts due to mining in deep underground mines. Energy release rate became one of the most used parameters for stope design in deep underground South African mines. Based on the energy balance, an incremental approach can be used to follow the changes due to mining. Based on the energy balance, an incremental approach can be used to follow the changes due to mining. The mining of an underground ore body usually implies the widening of excavation by increments. This leads to an energy release rate by unit surface used by when the opening geometry is regular, or a volumetric energy release rate used for irregular geometry openings. The magnitude of energy depends on geomechanical properties of the rock mass, in situ stress conditions, and the mining geometry and the layout of the mining excavation. So the energy that is stored in the part of the rock mass to be excavated, delta Um divided by delta A, is a measure of the stress concentration at the front if failure does not occur. The quantity delta Um by delta A is called the energy release, where delta A is the change in area defined as the length of the round multiplied by the height of the mining stope. The relationship between measured seismic magnitude and the strain energy released in one mining step with the method longwall mining has been studied extensively. Here is the mining area according to the South African definition. This is the delta A. This is here delta A. A relationship between energy release rate, number of damaging bursts, and rock conditions for longwall mines has been established. The energy release rate gives a hint of the rock burst potential within the mine workings. A damage criteria has then been formulated from this relationship relating to the energy release rate and the number of seismic events. The diagram shows that damage is negligible when U delta Um by delta A is less than 15 millijoule per meter square, while extreme damage occurs if the release of energy delta Um by delta A is larger than 100 millijoule per meter square. It has been found that when mining takes place in very small steps, no or little seismic energy is released. Energy release rate is used for designing mining layouts in deep mines with the purpose of reducing the seismic safety. An example has been illustrated here, considering the excavation of figure 4 is to be created in 2 steps as illustrated in figure 5. Since the behavior of the rock mass is linear elastic, the state of stress and strain at the end of the 2 mining steps must be the same as when mining in one step. Moreover, the total strain energy stored in the rock mass should be the same. However, it has been found that there is significantly less seismic energy released when mining in 2 steps than in one step. It is seen that the reduction in seismic energy released when mining in 2 steps instead of one. Furthermore, the maximum reduction of seismic energy, maximum area of the hatched rectangle can be achieved by making 2 mining steps leading to equal stress increments. That is, the optimum mining sequence would be the one which satisfies the condition number 6. Here the relationship between the energy release rate and number of seismic events. So this is the rate of energy release. Rate of energy release. Okay, millijoule per cubic meter, and this is the number of damaging bursts. So this is the if it is less than 20, it is negligible. If it is more than 20, it is slight. If it is 40, it is moderate. If it is 80, it is very severe. If it is 120, it is extreme. Rock deterioration in working areas. Definition of mining induced energy components. So here in this diagram, it is explained the extreme relief, stress relief, and stress accumulation. Strain energy stored in the rock mass due to mining, and This is the mine opening. This is the mine opening. This is the pre-mining stresses. Okay. So this is the seismic energy released due to mine strain energy loss. So you can provide mine supports to control the rock burst. Rock support in burst-prone ground requires a good understanding of the rock mass behavior under high-stress conditions and the behavior of the rock support system. Rock support in rock burst-prone ground differs from conventional rock support where controlling gravity-induced rock falls and managing shallow zones of loose rock are the main concern. In addition to these design issues, rock burst, rock support in burst-prone ground needs to resist dynamic loading and large rock bulking due to violent rock failure. Uniform and quick placement of support and use of rapid yielding hydraulic support is more effective in dynamic loading situations. This is the energy components when mining in sequences ERR1, ERR2, sigma 2 and mining sequence and reduction of energy released when mining in steps is explained in this diagram. Reduction of energy released when mining in steps. So S, this is the S zone of high stresses, zone of high shear stresses, and C is this C. C is the zone of very high compressive stresses. Is explained. This is the mining induced fractures. This is the dike contact. This is a weak patch. Okay. So, what is rate of extraction? Higher rate of extraction of ore from a comparatively small face and immediate placement of supports, resulting in better ground control. To control the ground movement, it is better to go for higher rate of extraction of ore from a comparatively small face and immediately after that place the supports so that the ground movement can be controlled. Then mine induced stresses. A longitudinal sequence of stope faces helps to avoid formation of pillars with their extreme stress build up along the length of face such that the superincumbent load is distributed more or less uniformly. Then stope sequencing, strict sequence of stoping with adequate leg and lead when parallel loads in closed vicinity. Then stoping near halted zones, stopping away from the zone of weakness such as faults, dikes, etc. should be done to avoid risk of seismic activity along large geological structures. Sleep on such structures has been observed to cause substantial damage in large parts of a mine. Then shape of the opening. By avoiding sharp corners that cause or enhance stress concentrations, you should avoid sharp corners. High density mine fill. Use of high density mine fill rock burst is minimized. If you can fill the voids with high density fill material, then rock burst can be minimized. Distressing of the abutment. Additional fracture distressing could be induced in the rock mass ahead of the face to extend the fracture zone by volley firing. In this method, explosives are used to fracture the working face to a certain depth before mining. The method is used prior to face advance or entry development to advance the high stress zone away from the working phase. Second one is hydraulic fracturing. This method involves the injection of fluid under pressure to cause material failure by creating fractures or fracture systems. Hydraulic fracturing is most effective in the roof and coal seam ahead of the longwall phase. Then remnant pillars. The formation of remnant pillars should be avoided to control the rock bursts. Pillar dimension. Width to height ratio should be treated with caution. Problems arise where pillar sizes are too small or too large. These improperly sized pillars are termed as critical pillars, and their use can result in the most extreme hazard possible. To mitigate the frequency of bumps, holding pillar in gate road is useful. Face orientation. The angle between the face and the geological features such as dikes, falls, or dominant joint sets must be carefully considered. Experience shows that an angle greater than 30 degrees between the feature and the orientation of the face is desirable. Then in situ stresses. The in situ stresses are an important factor in designing underground excavations and cannot simply be assumed. Measurements should be determined, stress state exists, and location of this anomaly. Width of the face. The use of shorter panels should be made to limit the extent of ruptures along face, parallel shears, and the consequent damage. Then seismic network. Use of mine-wide seismic network helps to facilitate the identification of hazardous areas and influencing parameters, as well as it aids to the back analysis of rock bursts. Current technology cannot predict when rock burst will occur, and the best we can achieve today is to identify areas of high rock burst potential using numerical models or our working experience. Microseismic monitoring systems have become an integral part of most hard rock deep mines in an effort to characterize mining induced seismicity for a quantitative evaluation of the seismic hazard. These systems have a considerable impact on the mitigation of the seismic risk by minimizing the exposure of personnel and equipment to seismic hazards remains. The origin of microseismic activity in rock is related to process of displacement or deformation or fracturing in rock, which are accompanied by sudden release of stored in that generates an elastic stress wave, seismic wave, which radiates from the point of origin within the rock to the boundary. Using a suitable sensor, it is detected remotely as a microseismic signal, discrete microseismic event. The seismic signals contain information about source characteristics such as the origin time, the location, and the fracturing mechanism. Microseismic monitoring is to observe the seismic waveforms originated from fractures and to obtain the source parameters from an inversion of the recorded waveforms. The amplitude and frequency of seismic waves radiated from such a source depend mainly on strength and state of stress of the rock mass, the size of the source of seismic radiation, and on the magnitude and the rate at which the rock is deformed during the fracturing process. The microseismic monitoring system mainly comprises of seismic sensors, signal conditioning units, data acquisition system, and software for data processing, visualization, and interpretation. The systems are designed to operate automatically and continuously. It allows real-time display of microseismic activities and location of strong events induced by mining. Geophones are used for sensing microseismic signals generated in the rock. The selection of geophone is made depending on its required range of frequency and amplitude of ground motion, which can be reliably converted to electric signal. The required number of geophones are installed in rock through boreholes from surface at different depths to make a three-dimensional network configuration. The geophone network configuration is decided depending on stratigraphy around the mine working. The geophone signals are transmitted to data acquisition system. The data acquisition system records amplitude and time of ground motion at sensors distributed throughout the volume of interest, assembles data at a central point for processing. Generally, the data are digitized as close to the sensor as possible, since in this form it is possible to protect against the corruption. The acquired data is communicated to central site through cable or radio. Triggering, validation, and data reduction is used to select and pre-process data corresponding to Bhal seismograms for storage and later transmission. The central site provides sufficient sources for performing seismological processing, archival storage of events, and assisting in interpretation by visualization techniques. In recent years, hardware and software advances in microseismic monitoring systems have allowed this geophysical technique to provide practical geomechanical measurements at operating mines. Many organizations, including CSIRO Australia, ESJ Solution Canada, Vulcan, and ISS International South Africa, have developed sophisticated microseismic systems for monitoring of the rock bursts in the mines. So this is all about today's class. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you.